All right, next question is Bruce. He says, how do you go about standardizing link building and cost for your SEO agency where it's easy to track and scale, but also effective and flexible to adapt based on industry and the algo? Well, there's a great book by Dan Kennedy called in the No B.S. series. And by the way, I'm going to have a mastermind webinar tomorrow in our mastermind, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit if I can remember. In fact, let me make a note of it. Dan Kennedy. Hold on, guys. I got something I'm going to point out here. There's two books that I think everybody in our mastermind should read. Everybody should read them, but I'm going to put them on our recommended reading for the mastermind. Adam, are we still sending books out to new members? We used to.
No, we're not doing that anymore, but maybe that's something we can look at kicking back up again this year.
Dan Kennedy, No BS books. There's two books that every one of you should read. Let's see. That's No BS, Time Management. And this one. These two right here. Starting with this one, No BS Time Management for Entrepreneurs. I highly recommend you guys get this book and read it, or get the audiobook, whatever. Get it on Kindle if you want to be cheap. I don't care. Get the fucking book is what I'm trying to tell you. Read this because it will really open your eyes as to what your time is worth and how you are completely undervaluing your time and underestimating what the true cost of, like what your productive hours are on a day, for example, and what your productive time is like, and what you would bill for your productive time if you were going to do it. So anyways, this is a fantastic book. I would say start with this one, and then you go to this one, this really opened my eyes and changed how I manage my business. This is the No BS Ruthless Management of People and Profits. So I would recommend starting with the No BS Time Management book. And by the way, if you guys have never read any of Dan Kennedy's No BS books, they read easy. They're entertaining as well as informative. That's part of the reason I love Dan Kennedy's work, because it's easy to read. You guys know, probably you've read business or marketing books, and they're a chore to get through, right? It's hard. They're not page turners. Dan Kennedy, the way he writes is very conversational, and it's easy. It's an easy read, right? It's kind of entertaining as well. So anyways, this is a great book, or excuse me, I would start with this one, the Time Management, so that you can really start to understand what your time is worth, number one. But then number two, the No BS Ruthless Management of People and Profits really had an impact on me and my business, my link building business. In fact, right after reading that book, first of all, I figured out what my numbers were. Like, I have it down, and that's why I've talked about this before. I pay on a per task basis, or a per item basis, because I know exactly what my costs are for every link that we build. Depending on which kind of link it is, I know precisely what my costs are to build that link. So I know what I sell those links for too. So I know exactly what my margins are. Does that make sense? So I know what my profitability is on my link building business, period. Like, I've got it down really, really accurate now. And I've never done that in my business until now, not in the SEO business until I read this book, which probably 4 or 5 months ago, maybe 6 months ago now. Something else I did was I promoted my longtime executive assistant, Hazel, to a project manager in my link building business. And she took so much, it took a couple of months to train her, but she took so much of my workload off of my shoulders because she became the project manager. She gets paid incredibly well. But she took a lot of work off my shoulders. But then I realized, and again, from reading this book, Dan Kennedy pointed out the fact that, if you have one key person that your entire business operates like it's dependent upon their ability to show up and perform, what happens if they get sick? Or what happens if they, God forbid, died or something like that? What would happen to your business? When I read that, it scared the shit out of me. And I was like, oh man, he's absolutely right. If something happened to Hazel, I couldn't manage this business on my own anymore, because she is such a linchpin, like such an important part of my business. And so right after reading that was in April actually of last year. So almost a year ago now. I remember specifically because I'd taken a weekend off to go ride ATVs and unplug, like I do. I try to do at least a couple of times a year. And it was right after reading, or I was listening to this audiobook on the way to that kind of trip to take off for the weekend. And that's when it dawned on me. And so I literally sent a Slack because I was driving. When I was listening to the audiobook, I punched up Slack, and you can send an audio message in Slack. And so I sent an audio message to Hazel, my project manager, and just said like, hey, listen, you're doing a phenomenal job, but what happens if you get sick or you can't show up or you want to take off for a week? The business won't operate, or like I would struggle to do it all on my own. And I said, so we need to hire another project manager. And so we have another one of our workers called, her name is Samantha. She is phenomenal. And so I said, think about who we could promote, or because Hazel also runs a staffing agency. I said, or we can hire somebody externally. You can bring somebody in, but we need another project manager, redundancy. We need redundancy, or else. So that way Hazel can take off if she wants, because now, and again, we ended up promoting Sam, which was one of our just virtual assistants, but now Sam is a second project manager. And the two of them are fantastic. I mean, it's amazing. And it gave me a lot of security and peace of mind in my agency. Right. So to get back to the question, and again, guys, I'm sorry if I went off on a tangent, but I think this is really important, guys, to understand, like, you got to shift your mindset about what your time is worth and like how productive you truly are during the day. Because a lot of stuff that we do is not really productive. It's busy, but it's not producing, right? It's busy work, but it's not productive work. And so this I thought was really good. And then this, like I said, taught me to, number one, figure out what the hell my numbers are, like as accurately as possible. And number two, build some redundancy into my business so that I don't, if something were to happen, that's not one person that is responsible for so much of the business. We have to have redundancy so that there can be some wiggle room. People can take off if they want, or if somebody gets sick, the business will still operate. Right. So anyway, hopefully that makes sense. I would encourage you to read that. Yeah. So know your numbers. That's the important thing. Know your numbers. What are your costs? What do you pay? You got to factor in your time, the cost of the tools, subscriptions, and services that you use. You got the cost of your virtual assistants, which again, I've talked about this multiple times, guys. If you can, start paying people on a per task basis, not an hourly basis. If you pay somebody hourly, they have no incentive to be more productive. In fact, don't they have incentive to be less productive if they're getting paid by the hour? So pay people by the per task completed, and it gives them incentive to be efficient, to become more productive. And again, I pay all of my virtual assistants incredibly well. They make more money working for me than they could working, many, many types of different jobs and even careers, because seriously, I pay on a per task basis and they can make a lot of money. That makes sense.